Hey there fellow creators, Ben here from Cinder Studios, and this week I'm going to be showing you guys how I've been making cradled wood panels out of the cheapest, crappiest scrap wood I've got laying around the house. Stick around. So in an effort to use up some of my wood scraps that at some point in time had paintings on them, this one did at one point in time, but it was never cradled, and it's just a piece of plywood that bowed way out. So what I've been doing with some of these, aside from gessoing over them a couple of years ago and sitting them in my studio and not touching them, I recently have been working on turning them into cradled boards by cutting some other wood to cradle it and just gluing it down together. And I'm going to show you how I've been doing this. So this process is going to involve a lot of different tools. I'm going to just kind of take you along the process with me, rather than telling you everything you need, because you're going to need a bunch of different things. This is sort of a household DIY project. We're going to be using traditional tools as well as a miter saw in my garage. You can do this with just a small hand saw, but I wouldn't recommend doing that, especially if you want to speed that process up. So, as I mentioned before, I'm starting out with this really cheap, crappy piece of plywood. The back of this has a knot which has since split and cracked. I'm going to be cutting that piece off for two reasons. One, any extra degradation to this wood would likely happen up here, so I'm going to just cut that whole side off. And two, I don't have as much of the smaller scrap wood for the cradles that I did previously. I found this stuff just sitting around in my garage. It's a pretty light wood. It feels and looks like it might have been a stretcher bar at one point in time. I've got a couple of them that I'm trying to figure out where these came from. I have no idea. The first thing I need to do, though, is square them off, because I definitely seem to have broken them or just cut them sort of. They were cut, but they were like cut just like, cut it in half. Get it in half, roughly. I do need to square them up if I'm going to use them to make a 7-inch square. So let me take you guys into the garage. Okay, so I apologize in advance for the insanity that is this workbench. This is sort of just the middle processes on things where everything goes to just sit. But we got our saw, and the first thing we need to do is split this in half. So I've got this marked off down to the side. This blade is not long enough to cut all the way across, so I have to take it and flip it, but it works just the same. Pretty much the entire reason why I specifically asked for a miter saw 2 years ago for Christmas, or at least the money for one, is for art projects like this that require a little bit more than, your standard, little bit of finesse in the studio. I needed something that actually did a little bit more. So, I'm just going to go ahead and split this. In order to be an artist of any kind, you need to be able to be versatile and to know how to work with a lot of different tools. Okay, so that's a little bit less bowed, and when we end up gluing this down to the wood, it will fix that issue. I can't guarantee it'll be perfect forever. I'm sure it will need conserved and fixed down the road, but for, a quick one-off, there we go. Okay, now from here, we need two of them to be 7 inches, because they're going to go on here like this. And then the other two are going to be whatever the width of this is minus the 7 inches, or minus the piece of the 7 inches, because it's going to sit in the center of it. Obviously, that's going to be a little bit of an issue, and there's also this gap here, which I could put this way, but would end up causing. Oh, actually, wait a minute. Yeah, no, well, I could do it either way, and I haven't decided yet now, or even down with it. That could work. In fact, that definitely will work. I'll have to do it that way. Okay. Anyway, so 7 inches to start on these. Okay, so that'll be our first two sections of this, which I'll make it that way so it's easier to measure. That cut wasn't even 5 1/4. It was five even. How the hell did I do that? Notice how I said measure twice and I didn't measure twice? Yep. That's what happens when you do something. Yeah, look at that. Look at that. Oh, wait, what? How? It still needs to be more than that. I'm going to cut it to 5.5. And then we can always shave a little extra off. All right. Put these back on. 7 and 7. This 5. Okay, so yeah, good. We'll cut it to 5.5, and then we take just like a blade's worth of wood off, and then we should be all right. That's perfect. Okay. 5.5 and a blade's width. And then we can glue. Okay. There's our measurements. Let's get some clamps and glue some stuff. Okay, clamp time. And of course, a little wood glue to get all this stuff together. Okay, so down at an angle now. Make sure I get my size here correct. So, previous ones of these I have clamped down all at once. It's just all 4 corners. Because of how bowed this wood is, I'm going to have to do this basically in 2 different cycles. But, in theory, once we get there, I should be able to just slot these other ones in, like so. So, you know, preface to how it will look once it is actually dry. Yes, but getting these on here is obviously the first and foremost. So I'm going to spread down a little wood glue on our 2 long sides. Now the wood glue itself is dry to sort of rehandle and rework in about an hour or so. But as far as finishing the piece and painting it and doing this stuff, it's closer to like 3 to 6. So in doing so, especially with this, it's important to really let it dry. And I'm going to use 2 clamps on each of the corners to be sure it is really holding to that wood. Because if I just did the one, you'd see this gap here, and we got to really be sure that that is in there. Now I also want to say that if you are doing this to a piece that is already painted, like this side of it, I would put a piece of paper on top of this, or at the very least just under where the clamps are, so you don't run into a problem later on of, you know, damaging the piece itself. Now this, luckily, is going to hold itself up a little bit. Might put just a tad more glue on the corners here in the middle. I'm actually going to need something to hold this up while I'm doing this. That's not tall enough. Should have thought ahead. I didn't. Kleenex box? That's close enough. Figured I have one clamp that's slightly smaller than the others. Ideally, you'd use clamps that are all the same size so you don't run into this problem. And thusly, I have one that's slightly smaller. Okay. We're in. We are clamped. The glue is spread. That's not there, it's down here. And we come back to this in a couple hours to put the other pieces on. Okay, so it's been all day because I glued this and then promptly forgot about it and got distracted into other things. So we can very comfortably take these off now and fit the other ones inside. As you can probably already tell, have flattened that out quite considerably, and all of that extra bowing that was there is now gone. So, same as before, we're just going to be dropping these in, and actually it looks like it's really tight on that edge. I thought I was going to maybe have to sand that down a little bit more, but I think as long as I just kind of stretch the wood a little bit on either side, they should slot in. I'll give it a little sanding, just to be safe. Take down just a little bit on both sides. To have that slide in a little easier. That one's okay. This one could actually use a little bit more. That's better. Okay, so just like before, we'll slot those in with the glue. I'm going to put a little bit more on the corners so I know that's going to squeeze out in together. Let's see, what was I doing? The lip on that side. All right. Just slide that in. Since it's a nice snug fit, I can actually squeeze that around a little bit more ahead of time before I actually clamp that. Make sure not to tighten it down too soon. I want to be sure to make sure there's room to keep them even in between. I'll do one corner and the other so it's easier to set up. And it's not completely perfect since it is all a bunch of scrap wood, but we are kind of keeping that all together. Here and there and there and here. And by tomorrow, this should be completely dry and ready to clean up the edges a bit more with. Okay, well, it's been a day and a half since I last messed with this, so I think it's more than enough time to see our results. Take all our clamps off. Now, is this absolutely perfect? No, not even a little bit. But for a bunch of random scraps I had just laying around the house and around my garage, this is a pretty fantastic little wood panel for basically no money. I do want to actually give the edges a little bit more finesse. It seems my lining up of the wood here is not as perfect as I would have liked it to be. I could also probably throw a little extra glue in these sort of open joints in here a little bit as well. But other than that, it's pretty solid. I'm going to go ahead and just sand the edges a little bit more and go ahead and give this a little bit of black gesso on those sides to clean this whole thing up. So obviously, because the wood is not, super fantastic, the layer of black gesso in this case is going to cover up a lot of those imperfections so they don't stand out. I mean, obviously, if this was a nice, clean, store-bought wood panel, you could just stain those edges and just leave it at that. But because we're doing a little more custom stuff today, just slapping on a thick layer of black gesso takes care of a lot of those imperfections and impurities that would stand out to the naked eye. So rather than something like an edge like that, you get an edge like this that just kind of fades away. And when you stick that up on top of a wall, you're not really going to be able to tell the difference. So there we have a nice little wood panel made entirely out of just the crappiest scrap wood I've had laying around. Honestly, the fact that I've been making so many of these lately, this one I'm surprised turned out as well as it did, considering how bad the wood was. These are just great little extra supports that you can make yourself, as long as you have the tools, of course. You don't necessarily need to go out and get the fanciest little wood panel at your local art store. you can just make them yourself. You know, stick some crappy plywood and glue it together with some other things, and you got yourself a cradled wood panel. Is this going to hold up as well as a fully treated, expertly prepared factory? No, of course not. But to get yourself a painting out there in the world, this is a fantastic way to kind of get yourself moving and save quite a few dollars in the long run. So that's going to do it for this video. I hope you found this little tutorial useful or interesting for your own work, or just, you know, if you love watching me talk about the process behind making art. If you do, let me know your thoughts and comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it. Check me out on socials in the description box below, including my own website, that you can sign up for my newsletter and see completed artwork, so stuff like this when it's done. Community Discord, where you can talk to me directly and ask me questions outside of the more public YouTube forum, as well as all the socials like, you know, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. Thanks guys for watching, keep on creating, stay inspired, and I will see you guys next time. Nearly gallery ready.